Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com. This is episode 9.
You are listening to a Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm Julie Wilson, and I'm here with John Webster.
Right, and we just got sidetracked because I brought a coffee down to Julie, and I made this mug with an expression that I'd thrown in my book at the end, and she said, "What's all that about?"
Exactly. So the expression is, "They are all perfect," and it just led to us this banter. We said, "Let's jump on a podcast."
Yeah, let's change. We were going to do a Move Your Body, but we're doing a What's on Your Mind instead. So it comes from the movie The Last Samurai. And what struck me was, it's funny that the things that really strike a chord,
yes,
and sometimes it's a movie. I often say that it's often a stand-up comedian. It's often a poem. It's often, how many times is it from art?
And it just resonates right in the moment.
Which, by the way, is a whole other topic.
Oh, we could talk about your art.
Well, just art generally, and
yes,
why I think art is such an important component of wellness and why it's overlooked, but it shouldn't be overlooked because it's so critical. So I digress. So in the movie The Last Samurai, which is a very long movie, so I don't recommend you watching it for this reason, but only if you really want to watch a long movie and if you don't mind warring tribes and stuff like that. But there's a samurai leader named Katsumoto. And there's an American soldier, played by Tom Cruise, who gets captured and brought to a town where the samurai live. And it's a really interesting movie about how he sees their lifestyle and their life in every breath concept, which is another point I took from that. But in particular, what happened in one scene is Katsumoto is looking at blossoms on a blossom tree. And he's asked, like, "What are you doing?" And he says something to the effect that I'm searching for a perfect blossom and that it would not be a wasted life to search for a perfect blossom. So in other words, it's something you could do for your entire life.
Yeah.
Okay. Skip forward to the end of the movie. I'm just, whoever is going to watch the movie and doesn't want to find out what happened.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Yes. So skip forward like 2 minutes. For those of you who do want to hear, he is dying on the battlefield and he's about to die and he knows it. And he looks up and he sees thousands of blossoms falling in the wind off a blossom tree and says, "They're all perfect."
Oh, that gives me goosebumps.
And when I saw that, it's just, so I have a theory and a feeling, it's come to me over time, that it's right now, the fact that we're alive right now and we're human beings who can have thoughts, rational thoughts. We are some of the luckiest beings in the entire universe. And yet we don't think about that. We don't appreciate that.
No, when you're young, like in the movie, when you're young, you spend so much time searching for that perfect blossom, right? Like that's but I can't help but think that if you had that wisdom of when you're older, like when he was dying on the battlefield, if you had that wisdom of, recognizing that we're all perfect. They're all perfect. And let's work with that mentality. But when you're young, you don't, you're striving, right? To see that, you want that perfect life.
When I drive to work, when that used to happen before COVID,
yeah, I
pass a high school. And so I see a bunch of high school people out front of the school. And I think about myself in high school. And the thinking is, in my analogy, you are the blossom. Like each of us is that blossom and each of us looks at ourselves. So let's say I look at an actual blossom on a blossom tree. I'm not going to find a perfect blossom. Yeah. There's not one that's going to be perfectly symmetrical leaves. Maybe it won't be the right color. Maybe there'll be a little chip out of something. Maybe the bend is just wrong. We will not find a perfect blossom in that sense on the blossom tree.
Right.
And that's how we each look at ourselves. I mean, how many imperfections can you find in yourself?
Oh, let's not start. That's a whole conversation for another day.
No, you just have to give me the number. You don't have to tell me what they are. Okay, so So we look at ourselves and we're like, oh my God, I'm a train wreck. And I'm certainly not the perfect blossom. And then, boom, you get to the end of your life, or you get later in life, or somebody like Katsumoto sees this and realizes it is living at this moment. Like the fact that you're drawing a breath right now.
And that's one of the sayings that, and I wish I could find it. We were chatting about that, but I know that there's a quote, there's a saying somewhere that, you know, if you are right now, if you're breathing, right now you're breathing, then all is right, all is good.
Exactly. And so, yes, you're imperfect, but at the same time, you're perfect. Yeah. We are all perfect, and we are all have imperfections, and that's why I like to think about that statement. And then so I told Sheila about that, and I said it would be nice. I would like to have a blossom tree if that's possible. And so she bought me for my birthday about 5 years ago. She planted a crabapple tree in our backyard. And it's
so you're out there.
Start off really small. I know I don't look for the perfect one, but what I do is, and it's amazing because they only blossom for maybe 3 weeks.
Yes.
Maybe not
early
even.
Spring.
Because
right?
you're waiting for them to be just the right color. Like so the first year I screwed up completely because I had my camera ready. I was waiting for it to be just right. And it was really small too. So there were hardly any blossoms on it.
Yeah.
And, it looks like tomorrow it'll be a little bit redder, a little bit better. And then, of course, I waited too long
and there's no blossoms left.
So now I know that just every day, no matter what state they're in, I just love to take a coffee. And especially if I can sit outside, but sometimes it's a little cool at that time of year. But I like to look at it. I like to enjoy it. And I like to remind myself that I'm alive right now. And the other thing I said off tape, which is funny, is the strangest people share my thinking.
Yes.
So, for example, I follow Ricky Gervais on Instagram.
Yeah.
And he totally connects with this same thought. Like he has a lot of posts that say something to the effect, because a lot of people think of him as a goofball, I guess. I like the guy a lot. And,
yes. Yeah.
You know, and he's a comedian. So, of course, he's going to say things that stir the pot. Like, that's what they do.
That's their right, almost, right?
Exactly. I love comedians, and they shouldn't have to watch what they say. But anyway, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying that. But he's had several posts where he says, hey, everybody, you're on a rock that's spinning like how many thousands of miles an hour around through this massive galaxy, and you're alive in this moment. So cherish it because you have something unique that's really amazing and something that should be cherished.
Yeah, no, I agree. And living in the moment, and that brings us back to wellness, right? And living in those moments and take those opportunities to do something for yourself. And you know, even if it is just a little walk outside, a little just be in the moment. You're breathing, you're alive. This is great, right?
There's so many aspects of, so when people, whether they're trying to overcome mental health issues or they're trying to enhance their yoga experience or whatever it happens to be, or even, you know, you're out for a walk, there's so many times where it's a lot better to focus on the present moment, to bring yourself to the present moment and be mindful.
Yes.
That it makes the experience that much more enjoyable. And that's why another expression I took from that movie, Life in Every Breath, is something I gravitate to. It's what you're saying. It's like, let's live in the moment. Obviously, you have to think of the future and everything else.
Exactly.
But take the time, you know, it's going to be another show, and I think we should probably wrap things up. But there's a whole other show about how people, expressions and quotes about people who live most of their life thinking and worrying about things that never happened and never will happen.
The little things.
No, like they're like a concern about what might happen in the future that never arises.
Yeah.
A concern about something that might have happened in the past that didn't happen.
Right.
And they're not even thinking about reality. Whereas if they can pull themselves to the present moment, that's like, I'm one of those people. I get down rabbit holes
really?
Of regret. I get down rabbit holes of worrying about something that's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can do in those moments is I usually try and bring myself back to the present. There's some little things I think about that help me come back to the present moment. And it really helps me a lot.
Do you know what, John? Let's talk about that in another session. I'd like to hear about some of those ways that you help bring yourself back into the moment. I think that would be a great discussion. And I think others would like to hear that too.
Okay, we'll do that.
Great.
Guests are giving their time. expanding our minds. Today we are talking with Michael Herman in the area of mental wellness. Michael is a lawyer with and general counsel to the international law firm Gowling WLG. I also work at Gowling as a civil litigation lawyer. What does general counsel do? Michael provides legal advice to the law firm, quite something. He plays many other important roles within Gowling WLG. With more than 30 years of experience, Michael is highly regarded as a strategic advisor to a broad range of clients. He advises clients on mergers and acquisitions, corporate development, corporate finance, and other complex business matters. He spent a number of years in senior executive positions at multinational public corporations, where he was responsible for strategic planning, strategic partnerships, corporate governance, and other marketing and investor relations activities. He is busy in his complex role as a general counsel, and we all benefit from his sage and strategic advice. I consult with Michael regularly on a couple areas I work in. That makes me lucky. He's a great sounding board. He asks how I'm doing. He cares about that. He helps me with strategy, but also to stay upbeat and positive. Michael went through a difficult period in his life while a lawyer. He gained personal insights from those experiences. He's a strong advocate for mental health in the legal community. Through his ongoing work to raise awareness and eliminate stigma, he hopes to make it easier for anyone experiencing mental illness to come forward and seek help without fear or judgment. We'll talk today about judgment from the outside and from oneself. Michael's intent on breaking down barriers and eliminating stigma. He's tireless in his efforts to take actual steps and participate in programs to help people. I am personally grateful for his work in this area. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John. It's great to be with you, and thanks for that somewhat over-the-top introduction. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, if we can, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, and we'll get to it, is this concept of stigma. And in particular, you mentioned at one point to me self-stigma, which caught me by surprise. And I think that that's something we can talk about. But I'm wondering if you can just help the listeners to start by telling us a little bit about your experience and how you found a way forward.
Sure. So like many people, I've had experiences where I have felt a little bit depressed or anxious in different times in my life and when I was growing up. And I found for me it was particularly during periods of transition, big transition. So when I started high school, when I started law school, when I started articling and moved to Toronto, these were all periods where I had difficulties, particularly with anxiety. And typically what I was told during these periods, if I did talk to anybody about them, and most of the time I didn't, but typically the message that came through loud and clear was just push through. Just keep pushing through. And so that's what I did. I would push through, and eventually things would ease up. Things would start to get more normal. I'd get more used to and adjust to whatever this new situation was. And everything would sort of go back to a base level of whatever normal means. But in 2016, I went through a period of feeling, it started really with physical difficulties. I got colds and flus that never went away. I was dealing with what was described as not a particularly serious problem called atrial fibrillation, which a lot of people suffer from. It's a heart arrhythmia, and it sounds a lot worse than it is. But for some reason, these colds, these flus, they just would not go away. They'd last for weeks and weeks on end. And eventually, I started to get depleted of all of my energy. And that depletion obviously had a big impact on my ability to concentrate, my ability to focus. I started to lose weight. I started to have severe digestive problems. So I wasn't retaining any of the nutrients from any of the food I was eating because it was all just going right through me. And so I reached a point where I just crashed. I just hit a wall and I crashed. And that led to deciding to take a leave of absence of 3 months. And I figured 3 months, I'll rest, I'll relax, I'll get better, and everything will be fine. And at the end of 3 months, I came back to work, and everything wasn't fine. All the problems returned, and again, inability to concentrate or focus on anything.
Can I just ask you? Can I just ask you on that? So, did you start to feel better before you went back to work? And then you went back to work and it got worse? Or
I started to feel a little bit better. Okay. And I started to feel a little bit stronger, and I started to feel a little bit more like myself. But as I returned to work, within a matter of 2 weeks, I realized that I was in absolutely no shape to be back at work. And so I then went on an indefinite leave of absence, and I had no idea what was going to happen.
And another question, Michael. So I know you said at times when there was change in your life, you felt anxiety. Mm-hmm. I can imagine, though, that you could either be feeling both at the same time, or maybe the physical was so strong you weren't noticing anxiety, or maybe did you notice any issues with anxiety during this period where you were feeling physically unwell?
No. At times in my life, I did. I would be able to say I'm feeling anxiety physically, and so I'm aware of it mentally or emotionally. But at this period of time in my life, no, I was not aware of any emotional or mental element. It all felt physical.
Right.
And everything I was doing was geared towards addressing the physical symptoms that I was experiencing and trying to deal with those physical experiences, and the problems I was having physically. That was my big mistake.
Because do you think there was something going on the mental side and it was kind of being masked or overridden by the physical?
Yeah, I actually, I think that the turning point for me and part of what allowed me to actually recover was there was one morning, it was beautiful, early summer morning. It was either late June, early July. And I was standing on the balcony of our apartment, and we have a nice view. And so I was looking out over the view, having a cup of coffee, and it was just gorgeous out. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I had a thought. And it seemed to just be there. And the thought was, what's the point? What's the point? And the thought affected me so much that I reflexively staggered back off the balcony into the apartment. And it was in that moment that I realized that the issues that I was dealing with primarily were mental issues, and that I was in the midst of some sort of severe depression. I don't know what you want to diagnose it as, but it was a severe depression. And that led to a change in mindset, and that led to an entire shift in what I started to look towards to try and recover, to try and get better. And it's hard for me to describe what depression felt like. So I sort of ask people to imagine as if they wake up every morning and immediately feel as if you're being sucked into a deep, dark hole into which no light enters and from which there is just no escape. And it's as if you're falling into an abyss every single day. On some days, to avoid the anxiety and the fear of being in that deep, dark hole, I would just numb myself so as to feel nothing. no emotion, no interest, no reaction to anything. At other times, I'd feel a profound sadness, John. And that sadness hurt more than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. And then there were days where I'd feel as if I was buried alive. And you can imagine how I was consumed by fear and panic in those days. And this went on day after day after day.
And you're talking about different feelings. So and I'm not saying they're limited, but sometimes it would feel dark. Sometimes you would feel nothing. Were you choosing kind of how you would react each day, or was each day kind of this bad surprise about what was going to hit you?
Each day was a surprise. Each day just brought what it brought. I felt as if I had absolutely no control at all. And I just was left with whatever it was that I was experiencing that day. But once I had my moment on the balcony and was able to do this shift, that started me on a very different path. It was as if I had this moment where a sliver of light entered into this deep, dark hole. A deep, dark hole that I hadn't actually recognized I was in to begin with.
Right.
But then there was this sliver of light that seemed to enter into this deep, dark hole. And that started a process of recovery. And that process of recovery involved many things. It involved professional help. And it's funny, I had seen a therapist from time to time over the years, but I started speaking to a therapist, started seeing a therapist. And one of the first things that the therapist said to me was, "You're in a deep depression. You're going to get better, but it's going to take you a long time." And it took me several weeks to have that register through my skull. Like I didn't get it. I kept expecting like a silver bullet. Like I have a session,
right,
and somewhere in the session, some magical thing would happen, and all of a sudden I'd feel better, leave the session, and life would go on. And it isn't like that. And so professional help, medication. I don't necessarily, I'm agnostic about medication in terms of does it work, doesn't it work? I think it does work for certain people. Some of the time it worked for me. I started to make pretty significant changes in my routines, and in the way that I started to try and take care of myself. And they included changes in diet, changes in the amount I exercised, because that is really important in terms of combating depression. I had dabbled in mindfulness meditation and the mindfulness practice for a number of years. I decided I was going to really devote myself to mindfulness meditation. I started to journal every morning. I had tried journaling. Everybody told me journaling is great. It's wonderful. I had tried it numerous times over my many years, and it never stuck. But this time I tried it, and it stuck. I started every morning. Instead of my normal way of operating had been to get up in the morning and go as hard as I could, as long as I could every single day.
Right.
Typical lawyer.
Yeah.
And many other people. But now what I started to do was I'd get up in the morning, and instead of go, it was take a pause, sit down, and journal.
And did you do that on the computer? Did you do that in handwriting?
No, I did it in handwriting.
Okay.
I still do it in handwriting every day. It's about 15 to 20 minutes. It's just stream of consciousness stuff. If I go back and try and read what I've journaled, either I can't read my writing,
right,
or I have no idea what I was thinking at the time. So it's really just stream of consciousness stuff. But what it does is it gives me that pause before I start my day. That puts me in a completely different headspace.
Interesting.
So that was really valuable. I reached out for support from my wife, who was phenomenal, from the firm, which was a tough decision to make, to reach out to the firm and really bring them in and tell them what was going on. And for anybody who's a leader out there, I can't overstate how important the support that I got from the firm was to my recovery on so many different levels. But it was crucial that I knew that I still belonged to that community and to that work community, and that it was a place I could go back to if I ever was ready to go back. So these were some of the things that I started to do to try and develop routines that were going to help keep me healthier physically. But more importantly, were going to try and move me from the deep, dark hole and slowly start to make my way up. And it wasn't linear and it wasn't quick. But slowly I started to more light started to shine in, and I would start to climb out of that hole. I'd slide back a little bit, but eventually I was able to see a path and start to climb out of the hole and make my way out into the light of the day. And at that point, I was able to come back to work. And even that process of returning to work really took about 4 months from beginning to being back at work full time. So I started really slowly with a few hours, a few days a week, and then built up to the point where I was able to return to work full time.
Yeah. And if I can just digress for a moment. So one of the themes that I'm trying to communicate is that even though we need to be careful with our finances, because that's a part of wellness too, one place you shouldn't scrimp too much is on health, and especially on things like mental health. You know, I think a lot of us, we just don't think to spend money on nutritionists and therapists and that kind of thing. And so just briefly on that point, you did see a therapist, and was that money well spent, and did that help you on your way?
So I was very fortunate. First of all, I was very fortunate that financially I was in a position to be able to do it. And it was very helpful. And the therapist really helped me go down into places that I'd been avoiding and suppressing for much of my life, frankly, and to see things in a different way than I had seen them previously. And one of the things, and I'm not a mental health expert, but one of the things that really concerns me about our health system is that we just don't have enough good quality therapists. They don't have to be psychiatrists or psychologists, but people who can help with mental health issues out there for the number of people who need them. And that's a big problem that we have, so that people aren't getting the help that they need when they need it.
Yeah, I know people who were struggling and, you know, in my opinion, needed some help immediately, and you couldn't even get on lists, let alone
get it's a huge problem, and it's one that is going to take the community as a whole to address. It can't be addressed in silos. It can't be addressed by any particular stakeholder. It's going to take all of the stakeholders coming together, working collaboratively, working innovatively, and understanding how widespread and how important this sort of help is to people who need it, and the costs of not having it in place to our society as well as to the individuals. That all has to come together if we're going to see the changes in that made. But again, that's not my area of expertise by any stretch of the imagination.
Join us next week to hear the second half of our interview with Michael Herman.
I'm Cameron, and this is The Starving Artist. All right, so today I'm joined by my friend Zach Gerber of Skytracks Studios. Zach's done a number of releases for my band Shy Harry and for myself. Zach, it's great to have you here, man.
Man, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for joining me. I was hoping you could tell us about a fun studio story you might have. It could be a Shy Harry story or not.
Okay, well, let's go with a Shy Harry story.
Okay.
This is for the song Wild One, which you can find on Shy Harry Spotify. We had tracked all of the instruments and all of the vocals except this little thing called gang vocals, which is super cool. You're basically trying to emulate the feeling of being at a concert or like a lot of voices, right? So you get a whole bunch of people into a room and you put up a mic and then you all sing or yell in unison and you do it a whole bunch of times. And then, let's say there's 10 people in the room. If you do that 10 times, it turns into 100 voices. So that's what we were doing. We were building this gang vocal out. And my studio is in a basement. And we were just about ready to hit record. And boom, the power goes out. And of course, being in a basement, no windows, it's like really dark. Like the only light in the room is my lit up computer screen because I was using a laptop at the time. So it was running off of battery. And we were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And it would be a pain to get everybody back together. So someone ended up discovering that the building next door that we also had possession of still had power. So lo and behold, we rip in the dark all of the gear that we needed to do the session out of the studio and drag it through a storm next door to the big empty cavernous room that was next door. It used to be an art gallery. And we had just moved in there, so there was not a lot there. And we dumped all of the gear in there, and we put it all up, and we made it all work, because there was power. And we did the gang vocals there. And this is a bit of a nerd tangent, but what was super cool to me is that as a producer, I feel like every time I hit record on a session, you freeze a moment in time, whether that's like a feeling of sadness or a feeling of joy or an incredible performance or whatever it happens to be, that gets frozen and it never goes away. And what I think got frozen on this particular track is just this like incredible collaborative and like problem solving effort of getting all of this gear out of the basement in the dark to this room next door. And then the sound of the vocals themselves are deeply imprinted by this idea that we were performing them in this big empty cavern, and we captured an incredible room noise that we wouldn't have been able to get really anywhere else, even if I had tried to get it in Pro Tools. And that's forever there. So that's what we did. It was a fun night. Beers were had, laughs were had, and we got the session done.
We worked the problem and got it done. Yeah, a fun little tidbit about that story, actually. One of the tenants who lived above the gallery, the next day we ran into her at the coffee shop, and she was like, what were you guys doing? Because it was late. It was super late at night. And we were just yelling for like an hour straight, right? What were you guys recording? So maybe not as fond a memory for her, but sorry.
Sorry. It's
Sorry.
a fond, you know what? It's a fond memory for us, and that's what I'm going to go off of.
It was a good time. That one's a good one.
Yeah.
If you're interested in making your own recording, or you want to check out some of the other stuff Zach has worked on, you can find him at skytrackstudios.com. On your socials, Instagram at Skytrack Studios, Facebook at Skytrack Studios.
Correct. You
Easy
got all
peasy.
of them.
All right on. Not about the TikTok life.
Not about the TikTok life. I'm too
Right
old for
on.
that.
That's it. So, that's pretty much all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me, Zach. I appreciate you telling the story and hanging out. I'm sure we'll have you back again soon to tell about some more fun shenanigans we've had together.
I hope so, man. This has been fun.
Oh, yeah. It's been a pleasure. For now, though, that's all we've got. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing and enjoy the show, please spread the word about us. Connect with us on social media. We post regularly on our Instagram account, including show previews and takeaways after a show is aired. Feel free to comment and send us your thoughts. follow our Instagram account. It's at lets.be.well.together. We do have a Facebook and Twitter page, but Instagram is our primary social media site. Please also subscribe to us and rate us on your favorite podcast platform.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
So we're sharing experiences and obviously hoping to inspire people. Mm-hmm. And some of the experiences that I went through are surprising and make things manageable for people, I think. So I used to often think about working out like, okay, I've got to go to the gym. Yeah, boo.
Yeah.
I'll do it because I have to do it for whatever the reason happened to be. I will do it. But it was always work. And I remember specifically looking at treadmills with dread because thinking, I don't know, man, like, I don't know if I could do that for half an hour.
Yeah.
So what changed? Well, a couple things. One, I bought into and started enjoying a manageable aerobic exercise as opposed to higher intensity.
Right.
And I was starting to do runs at a low heart rate. And, I can say more about that another time. And secondly, and maybe because of that, but for whatever reason, I started to really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And there was lots of things I already enjoyed. Sheila and I love going for walks, especially if it's in nature.
Yeah.
So we love biking and that kind of stuff. And so I guess the gist of today's show is, and I want to ask you if you have any, Sammy, is, are there things that you just enjoy doing? So instead of being that grim duty where you're like, oh, I got exercise, where in fact you're like, I can't wait.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of things, actually. Kind of what you mentioned, like the being in nature and just going for a walk. I go for a walk quite a bit throughout the week. And me and my boyfriend, because he has a dog, we like to go on long, like hour walks. And he lives up in like Pioneer Park area. So in Kitchener-Waterloo, there's all these different trails that you can take throughout the forest and along the Grand River and just really be like kind of engulfed in the nature. And you see the sun shining through the trees and you see the shadows and in the winter you see the snow, and it's so much fun for the dogs too. And I love that. And it's kind of like a form of meditation, honestly, for me, where you're just being in nature and being present and just moving your body. Something else I really love to do, especially in the summertime and spring, is going on bike rides.
Right.
I love biking. Like, probably my favorite thing to do is just going on a nice bike ride. And again, because KW has so many different trails, you can really like bike everywhere. And it doesn't feel as like straining. It really feels just like you're enjoying the movement. There might be a couple hills here and there, but for the most part, like, you're just enjoying like the wind and being in the sun and in the forest and with your friends. And it kind of takes you back to childhood almost.
Sheila and I have been biking forever.
Yeah.
We love biking. Yeah. And really exciting, a couple of years ago around Christmas, we got new bikes.
Yeah.
And she finally got the one that she wanted, the European one where you're sitting straight up and you need a baguette in your in your basket, which she has a basket on the front.
Perfect.
But the other thing that we got, which is amazing, is we got a bike rack that goes on the back of the vehicle.
Nice.
And one of the things that we love to do, and you should try it if you haven't done it. Yeah. So for people who don't live in Ontario, there's a place called Niagara-on-the-Lake. It's close to Niagara Falls, and there's a lot of wineries. Believe it or not, there's a lot of great wine coming out of Ontario, Canada.
Yes.
And so what we like to do is we go up there, and if we either stay overnight or we'll even just park somewhere, grab the bikes and just start biking.
Yeah.
We bike to downtown, look around, we bike to a winery. We do some sampling. And of course, this isn't, we're not talking about a workout here, but the point is, there's just so many amazing things that we can do to incorporate moving our bodies in everyday life in really enjoyable ways.
For sure. Yeah. And I can definitely vouch for that. Niagara-on-the-Lake. I love Niagara-on-the-Lake. And just this past summer, me and David went and did one of the bike tours. So you grab your bike, you get fitted for whatever one, and then you go to like 5 or 6 different wineries and you just kind of bike around Niagara-on-the-Lake, stop, have your samples, maybe have a little snack. And then like lunch was included, and it was so much fun. It was probably one of the hottest days in the summer. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, we were hot, but I found like I just had to keep focusing on the wind. that was because we were biking. Like there was no wind when you were stopped, but when you were biking, you felt a little bit of a breeze. And it's just such like a calming experience. And I was like, I just want to be here. And then, once you get to a couple wineries, you don't even notice the heat. So
Yeah.
you're good to go.
So
Yeah.
we're probably singing to the choir, as they say, for the people who are regular exercisers who listen to our show. But if you're not, like if you're thinking, oh, I don't like exercise, it's just, I'm just not into it right now. Sharing my experience was actually walking, starting with walks. It was the start of all my breakthroughs when good things happened. Just start small, just get out there and really, if you haven't tried walking through a path, and most people in most cities in North America, you just can find trails to walk on in your city or your town or close by. Try it. It's a lot of fun. It's enjoyable.
Yeah.
And with any luck, you'll try different things, biking, try running, try walking, try tennis,
Yeah.
whatever it is, but try something until you find that move your body that you love, that you look forward to, as opposed to grim duty.
For sure.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. Sometimes we come up with our own ideas, something new and innovative, but a lot of times the messages have been out there, the wisdom, the life lessons, they've been out there and we just didn't see it. So when we come up with something we think that is our own and we look into it, we see that it's being said over and over for thousands of years, including something that came to me. Having started doing this, once in a while when I'm talking about the podcast and people ask me about it, they ask a kind of question, and in the end it's directed at something to the effect, so what's the answer? What's the answer? How can you be well? It's hard to figure out how to respond to that, because I think what it's getting at is that people think there's a destination, that once you figure things out, you're at wellness and you're at this spot and you've arrived and you're going to be there and hang out there for forever. So it occurred to me that wellness, it's not the destination. Wellness is a journey, and it's ongoing. It's ever changing. You're never at a static spot. And I thought, oh, hey, that's an original thought. Of course, as soon as I poked around the internet a bit, you can see that same thought expressed over and over again. For me, the lesson came after I ran a couple marathons, and this isn't the spot to talk about the whole story about why I did it and this and that, but the point was, when I ran the first one, certainly there was the feeling, I just want to see if I can do it. This is something that maybe I can't achieve, but maybe I can, and I want to prove that I can do it. The destination was really important. Being able to finish it was really important. And so I had done months and months of training, and all kinds of things happened during training, all kinds of states and emotions and ups and downs and amazement at how things change. These things were all happening, but I only thought about the destination. And I ran the first one. It didn't go how I had hoped. So I decided to do a second one, and it did go really well. My destination was achieved. I got there. Then I realized afterwards that the richness of the experience, the amazing part of it, it wasn't actually the race. It was all that training that led up to it, all those moments, all those different feelings, the things I learned about myself, the things I had to confront. It was the journey. And as I think more about wellness, I think it's the same thing. We're constantly having to reshuffle our priorities. We're constantly have to make decisions about which areas of wellness to focus on at any given time. Balance is an ever-changing thing. And now that I'm starting to wrap my head around that fact that it's okay that I'm not at some spot, some stationary spot, but it's more a matter of trying to keep balance at any given time and finding ways to do that. It's not only more enjoyable to go through each moment, but it's also a bit exciting. It's another way that I can see that there's a way forward that's achievable.
Yeah, just let me say, flip side of the coin.
So today we are talking about a few quotes
Yes.
that make some sense in terms of one of our overall themes. But just before I go there, so we're not experts, we're not teachers, we're just regular people. So why listen to us? Hopefully, the very simple answer is you like listening to us.
Yeah.
So that's it. But I can tell you from our side, what we're trying to do as regular people, we're trying to figure some things out that we think are really important to our wellness. And we think we're onto something with our framework, finding activities to strengthen areas of wellness, trying to balance in those areas over time, talking about that, asking guests about wellness and those topics, because we're curious.
Yeah.
And we're inviting you to listen in, and we're hoping to remind you that you're worth it and that it's worth working on your wellness. And we're hoping to inspire you to get physical. Take care of the physical health side because it's so important. So when you're a regular person and you see quotes by more well-known people that kind of make your point, it's helpful. So you can see from our mottos and logos and whatnot that I like the expression, live life in every breath. And we've talked earlier about Mahatria Ra, a spiritualist who we saw do a presentation at the Rotary Convention in Korea in 2016. And I'll re-put up the link again in the show notes if you want to watch the whole thing. But one of the things he said, and it's just one of those great ways of putting things, he said, putting days into life is aging. Putting life into days is growing. Let's keep growing by putting life into every day of our lives. Make it count.
Yeah, I really think about that. I try and think about that every day, like just in my regular day-to-day activities that I'm doing. Because right now I've got this job where I start early, which probably isn't early for most of you, but I have to be there at 6:45, so 6:45. So often I'm out there working. I'm driving around, and the sun's just coming up. So to see the sunrise and the world starting to blossom, I try and just take a moment and go, wow, that's beautiful.
It's a lot of it maybe is about not taking things for granted.
Yeah.
So one side of it is I'm the type of person who unfortunately gets caught up in regret. Things that happened in the past, things that I did that I wish I hadn't done. And it's hard to shake the thought. It's hard to come back to the moment. Or I'm the kind of person that worries about the future.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm a litigation lawyer, but I always see how things are going to go wrong.
Yeah, 100 different ways.
Yeah, which drives Sheila crazy.
Oh my gosh. It's like, why worry about this until it happens? Like, why even put thought into it? But he has to figure out every single scenario that could possibly happen.
Well, the worst thing is the worst scenarios are the first ones that come to my mind.
Yes.
Because I've seen things go wrong so many times. So again, I'm trying to bring myself back to the present. That's why, to me, live life in every breath. One side of it is trying to remind me, look, you're breathing now. Come back to your breath. Come back to the now.
But I really love this quote because it's talking about your day to day and life can go by you just living your life and letting life go by that way. But you need to put.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, the other side, another part of his speech, which ties in, is he was saying, too many people, come on, guys, stop asking what your job's going to do for you. Stop asking, it's the old JFK line.
Yeah.
Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But more of the concept is stop being in an experience and just being like, oh, I'm in this experience and it's passing by. What can you add to it?
Yeah. Even just by smiling, participating, helping.
Right. How can you make the experience better for yourself?
Yeah.
And that's probably going to make it better for people around you. And so the one quote from Mahatria we read, and then life in every breath. And I've mentioned that of all people, it's a bit surprising to me when I see these things, but I started to see them regularly from Ricky Gervais. And I share a lot of his thinking in the sense that, and he's a comedian. He says a lot of outrageous things that people get upset about. It doesn't bother me. He's a comedian.
Yeah.
But so I have actually a picture of something he posted on Instagram on August 8th, 2020. And here's what he said, which really captures what I often feel now that I have this new live life in every breath approach. He said, we're on a rock traveling around one of 100 billion stars, which is probably an underestimate. Our species is one of over 500 million that have ever existed. Our chances of being born are about 1 in 400 trillion. You're not special, but you are lucky. Enjoy your amazing life. You'll never exist again. that is something that I try and emphasize in my book on this show, which is we are lucky to be alive in this moment.
Yes.
We got to cherish it. And that's kind of the thinking of live life in every breath. Add life to days. Please remember, we're not providing advice. We're sharing our experiences and thoughts. We hope to inspire you to think about and foster wellness actively in ways that work for you. We try and get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or the things we talk about will work for you. We urge you to consult with qualified people when you need advice. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It is sign-off time, and we're back. It's Julie, who's come back from a ski trip that I want to ask about, Sheila and John. Sammy is having her birthday today. It's her champagne birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
We're
Sammy.
hoping she's having a blast right now. Mm-hmm. So, Julie, how was the ski trip, and what are you up to next week?
So we ended up at Mont Cascade in Quebec. It's just over the border in Ottawa. Fantastic conditions. The snow was amazing. And the nice thing, friends of ours, they own a little piece of property that sort of sits in between the two sides of the hill. And so we can just ski directly from their place right onto the hill.
Nice.
So anytime, yes, it was fantastic. We could stop back in for lunch, take a little break, put on the skis, back out again.
Nice.
And they're open until 9:30 at night. So it was a great couple of days. And
good weather, because we had rain, like so much rain this week.
Fantastic weather.
Great.
It was sunny all day. Yeah, I could have taken off my jacket. I bundled up thinking, oh, it's going to be so cold. In fact, my boys, they skied back to our friend's place, took off their jackets and skied the rest of the day without any coats on. But
Nice.
So perfect conditions all around, weather, snow, and location.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I'd love to be skiing still. However, there's no more snow on the hill. Although today they probably could have been making snow. It felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
So this week, few walks planned. Looking forward to that. But I must say, and I know, John, you were chit-chatting about wine, and we had some great wine while I was away at our friends. But I hear you were at an event last night.
Yes, it was.
Do something with wine.
So we have to thank my brother-in-law, Don, and his wife, Jenny. Don is a member of the Westmount Golf Course here in Waterloo, Kitchen-Waterloo. And they had an incredible wine pairing event with some amazing food by their chef. And it was just so fascinating. So Sheila and I both love wine, but we're not, say, overly knowledgeable. So like we're more like loving amateurs, but don't know that much. So it was so fascinating to be able to taste it with these foods, all these different kind of wines, a few wines I'd never heard of or tried before, and trying them before the food comes, and it has a certain effect on your palate. And then you have the food with it, and the wine tastes completely different. It was just spectacular.
It was really, really cool because when he invited us, it was a wine tasting. He told us it was a wine tasting. So we just assumed that it was, you walk around and you taste wine and maybe some cheese. But as it turned out, there was only 8 people in the event, and the sommelier was sitting with us. So we had his attention the whole time. We could ask him questions about anything. And it was so intimate and...
How neat.
Yes.
Oh, I'd
really
love
neat.
And the other twist that I'd never heard of before was this particular wine group. They bring wine in from all these different countries, and what they look for, among other things, is organic. He was talking about organic processes, not just in terms of the normal farming organic, not using pesticides, but also not adding additives and all that stuff. And I'd never even thought of that in the wine context before. So it's something I'll look into.
Yeah.
So how about you, Sheila? How was your week?
Well, I had that event, and my week was really rainy and muddy.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Not the week you were hoping for.
No, last week I was like, I'm going to enjoy the sun. I don't know if the sun was out at all. So that was a bit of a drag, but I had a great day yesterday. It's our son's birthday tomorrow. And as I said a few months ago that he is getting married, yesterday we said yes to the dress. So
Wonderful.
wonderful.
I know. So John's not overly excited, but it was really cool.
Yay.
I was really happy to be a part of that. Sammy's birthday, Jeremy's birthday, and that's about it
When's
for
he
me.
getting married?
Not till May 2023. So
Lots of time to plan.
we've got lots of time to plan. Yeah. So we're ahead of the game, but it's good. And John, what about you this week?
So I had a good week from the running perspective.
Even today?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a bit about that. So I decided that I have to get my mojo back and get my confidence back on because I've got this half marathon coming up on May 1st. And for whatever reason, even though I shouldn't be worried about it, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can run that far. So I thought I'll up my mileage on Thursday, and I did 15K. A half marathon is 21.1. And then I had a great park run yesterday. It's a 5K park run, but I pushed it to what's called a threshold run. And probably the best way to describe that is just you're running at a comfortably uncomfortable pace. So you're not knocking yourself out, but it's not easy. You're comfortably uncomfortable, but that went well. And then today I thought, what better way to figure out if I can do the miles? I just did a half marathon. So the problem was, though,
It was a snowstorm.
I'm so stubborn. I'm like, I'm going to go do this. And then I look out and it's winter. I'm like, well, that's fine. I'm tough.
Just a little snow.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is we actually left the car at the event last night because we didn't realize that there'd be that much wine. So we drove there.
Because we thought it was a little wine tasting, just a little wine tasting.
Yeah.
The
So
little one.
It was like a 9-course event.
so I plotted out a route that would make me end up kind of overshoot. It's about 8K away. So I overshot it and then came back and ended up at the car to drive it home.
Pick up the car.
So the problem is I did kind of a straight shot the first 11 kilometers up this one street, and it was completely against the wind. It was crazy.
John.
There's snow coming. It's blowing in my face. My ears are starting to freeze.
Like
so
it said it was -5 or -6, but it felt like -15 out there. Like
I'm pretty sure the wind was like 30K or something.
That's what I was going to say. The wind was strong. Yeah.
And then I had to readjust things to try and then it felt like beside my eye, it felt like weird as if I'm like, am I getting frostbite? So I was running with my hand on my skin just for a while. And I'm just like, what am I doing out here? You're crazy. But I kept going.
And not only that, you're farther from home than, if you turned around and came back, like it would have been just as long. You were so far away. Yeah.
But I somehow found a way. I mean, it sounded like, those old grandpas. I was going uphill and against the wind the whole time. But anyway, so and the other problem, I like to listen to music when I run, but I couldn't because my ears got so cold. I had to adjust things so that I couldn't have the headphones on the way I wanted to if I wanted to keep my ears warm. So I was kind of bored, but I'm stubborn. So I just kept going. And now I'm really happy because I got it done and I know I've got the miles in my legs. So now the just question is, do I want to push my speed a bit? And I mean, if I could do it today on a day like this, I'm sure
you can
May 1st is going to be better weather.
100%.
It's got to be.
But I will tell you.
No snow on May 1st.
It's got to be better.
I got to tell you though, one of the biggest lessons I've learned from distance running is that Mother Nature rules.
Yes.
You have all these dreams and ideas and concepts and training plan that every time you have something planned, every time there's an event, you just got to cross your fingers because Mother Nature will humble you and make you work hard. Mm-hmm. So that's my week. And I think that's quite the sign off, don't you think?
Yeah.
100%.
It was great.
Well, I hope everyone has a great week.
Yeah.
And look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks for listening. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.